I know some people are using it as a bit on social media, but I am all in on a second reunion with CJ Gardner-Johnson.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day, and thanks for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Louie DiBiase. On today's edition of the podcast, we are going to preview the NFL Scouting Combine, 3 prospects to watch on both sides of the ball. But before we get into that, we got to talk about CJ Gardner-Johnson. And I know, again, like I said at the start of the show, a lot of people are using this as a joke because he is a free agent. And CJ did say last week when asked live on social media if he would consider coming back to Philadelphia for a third time in 2022, 23, 24, 25, 26. In 5 seasons, he would be there 3 seasons, but 3 separate times he would sign with the team. He said, come get me. It does sound like he's on board again. And again, a lot of people are using it as a bit, but when you actually look at the Eagles' current situation at the safety position, when you look at what Gardner-Johnson's market might be, when you look at the price and just the situation of where he's at now compared to last offseason when they traded him, I don't think it's actually going to happen. I wouldn't predict that they're going to do this because there's a reason that Gardner-Johnson and the Eagles keep parting ways after 1 season. There's a reason that he's been bouncing across the league despite really solid production. But if I was Howie Roseman, not what I think they will do, what I would do, I would go as far as saying not only am I in on a reunion, but I would take CJ Gardner-Johnson in 2026 over Reed Blankenship. Instead of paying Reed $9 to $10.5 million a year, I would much rather pay Gardner-Johnson on the open market than Reed Blankenship. I don't think either player deserves that kind of money on a year-to-year basis, but if I was going to spend the money on one of them, I know the Eagles have already passed up on giving CJ a contract extension twice after 2 great years where he had 6 interceptions in both and helped lead you to the Super Bowl, and I think was an instrumental part in those defenses being as dominant as they were, but they passed on both extensions. With that being said, I would pay him over Blankenship. I would be very comfortable getting him probably at a cheaper rate than you would get Blankenship on the open market. I think CJ, yes, there are things about him. I think he wears thin with certain locker rooms, with certain teams. I do think when he has big-time seasons, he instantly looks for another huge payday. I think that was the reason the Eagles did part ways with him, more so than him being like a locker room problem, because I don't think that is who he was in 2024. I actually saw a lot of maturity in his leadership style, in his mentality compared to 2022. I saw somebody that was kind of a mentor and a leader in a very young secondary. Although, again, there was a lot of rumors about him, and, again, he can wear a locker room thin, an organization thin. I do think the bigger problem with him and the Eagles, why this keeps happening, is he has a great year. The Eagles get him for a bargain, right? When they traded for him in 2022, they got him on a bargain contract. In 2024, coming off an injured season with Detroit, they got him on a bargain contract. And then he outplays that contract, and he instantly wants a pay raise. And the Eagles normally do not pay the safety position a whole lot of money. So that's why it probably won't happen, because I can't imagine like this relationship will ever be sustainable. But again, in a vacuum, if the money is similar, and I think it'll probably be cheaper to bring in Gardner-Johnson than Reed Blankenship, I just love CJ's playmaking aspect. I love the swagger and the attitude that he gives this defense, the trash talk. Like, other teams hate to play this guy. And I love having a player like that on this football team, as long as he is not a locker room cancer, as long as he does not cause problems. And I just haven't heard, even with a lot of the drama from last year after the trade, I didn't hear a lot of stories about him being an annoying player that nobody could stand. He was even one of the guys that stood up before Super Bowl 59 and gave one of those emotional speeches. Like, it was Jalen Hurts, it was Brandon Graham, it was Lane Johnson, it was all these different leaders. But it was also CJ Gardner-Johnson. I think he matured a lot from 2022 to 2024. And yes, when he is not happy. Like, the culture and the situation of the season definitely has to be going right. I think he's someone you love to have in a really good year, but yeah, he might be a problem in a season where you're struggling. And I think that's what happened with Houston last year. He definitely can wear out his welcome, but look, when the situation is right, in Philadelphia in 2022, he has 6 interceptions. In 2024, he has 6 interceptions. He goes to Chicago last year and fits in really well with that locker room, and they're having a playoff division-winning season. He has 2 interceptions coming in halfway through the year, has 3 sacks for the Bears. They used him actually as a pass rusher at times, as a blitzer getting to the quarterback. He was still a good player. So, I don't know. It's kind of a funny bit, but maybe they should keep this thing going where it's like, it's this funny trend of he plays so well in Philly, a Super Bowl run is a result, then he goes seeking the payday, and the Eagles are like, it's not going to be here, so he moves on. It doesn't work out elsewhere. It's either an injured season or the locker room, the culture fit just isn't right for such a unique personality. Then he comes back to Philadelphia. The grass isn't always greener on a team-friendly contract. Maybe outperforms the deal again, and then you move on. Like, Maybe at the third time's the charm, and he'll say, okay, I had it really good in Philadelphia. Maybe I will stop hunting for that deal. But I personally totally understood Gardner-Johnson's perspective last season, and it didn't even sound like he was somebody that demanded more money right after the championship win. The Eagles were trying to get out in front of it. I think they were trying to be proactive. They saw it coming eventually because he was still on. He still had, it was a 3-year deal. It was a 2-year deal, but with 3 years of term. They had another season of that contract, but I think they knew Gardner-Johnson eventually, like, the contract talks were coming, but they weren't there yet. It's not like he instantly after the title win, instantly after they got a ring, he went to Howie Roseman and said, pay me. So I like him. Again, I know there's annoyances with him. I know sometimes it's hard to sustain having him on a football team, but I think he has brought some legitimate positives to a lot of football teams. I think he was an instrumental part of the Saints defense when they were a legitimate contender with Drew Brees at the end there in the early, late 2010s, early 2020s with Philadelphia. It's not a coincidence that the Eagles in 2023 were lacking that dog mentality. They bring Gardner-Johnson back and they got that swagger back. Like, I think he is that kind of guy. He's a tone setter. He's a playmaker. I want more interceptions in this defense. In 2 seasons with the Eagles, CJ Gardner-Johnson has 12 interceptions total, 6 in one season, 6 in the other. And I don't think he'll be as much as Reed Blankenship. You might be able to get him cheaper. If that's the case, I would love to bring him back. Again, is he the tight-knit locker room guy that Reed Blankenship is? No, but I saw a lot of maturity in that. In 2024, I saw him go to a team that fit better than Houston. Again, yeah, like, if the situation's not right, and Houston had a lot of dogs in that secondary. They had, Derek Stingley and Lassiter, and they had Jalen Petrie's one of the best safeties in football. Kalen Bullock, one of the best young safeties in the NFL, a ball hawk his rookie year, and was good his second year as well. Gardner-Johnson, like, he's an alpha. No, in that situation where you're asking him to be like the third safety, a role player, when you got all the other dogs around him, probably not the move. But in Chicago, it worked out. He had 2 picks and 3 sacks down the stretch. He was a good player for a team that got to the second round of the playoffs. So it's, again, kind of like the Hulk and Marvel, where it's, all right, we want to use him, but not too much, because then he could destroy everything, including us. But let's use him for when we need him to attack the aliens, but when he's about to attack New York City, maybe we'll get rid of him. We'll throw him on, the other planet, like in Thor Ragnarok for my Marvel fans out there. But we sent him away. He's calmed down. Maybe let's bring him back. I don't hate the idea, to be honest. And who knows? Safety might be a need depending on what happens with Reed Blankenship. But Gardner-Johnson and Makuba at safety would be a lot of playmaking ability, and it sounds like he is open to this. I highly doubt the Eagles are, but I would absolutely be. I wouldn't have got rid of him in the first place. You guys remember, if you were Locked On Eagles viewers and listeners last year, I did a live show right when they traded him to Houston, and I was not happy. I liked what they did last offseason. I agreed with letting Josh Sweat go and Milton Williams. I was on board with letting Darius Slay walk and pretty much every in-house decision they made, but trading him away I thought was the one mistake, and Makuba was good, and I thought they didn't really miss him all that much when Makuba was healthy, but when Makuba did get hurt, and it was Blankenship and Marcus Epps. Like, that's a solid 1-2 punch, but the playmaking was definitely something you saw that was missing from Makuba and the absence of Gardner-Johnson from the year before. So, I don't think they would do it, but I am all in. Let me know what you think. Hit us up on X at Locked On Birds or our YouTube community page at Locked On Eagles. Coming up next, we'll preview the NFL Scouting Combine. I'm headed to Indianapolis right after this show. 3 players I'm watching on offense and on defense. But first, today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is presented by HomeChef. As the new year gets going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is a big one. Between busy work days, cold winter nights, and packed schedules, having an easy, reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference. That's where HomeChef comes in. HomeChef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated number 1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, and taste. Recipe ease. It's easy to see why. Meals come ready to fit your schedule. 30-minute recipes, oven-ready trays, or quick lunches. Over 30 weekly options, including family-sized meals and different dietary choices. I'm on the go all the time. I have 2 full-time jobs. I got a busy life, and HomeChef has been so clutch for me over the last couple months. For a limited time, HomeChef is offering my listeners 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. All you got to do is go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. Thanks as always for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day in the Locked On Podcast Network, the number 1 sports podcast network. If you're not already subscribed, make sure you join the Locked On Eagles Everydayer Club, $5 a month. That's it. $5 is going to get you, I mean, that's what at this point, a couple bags of Cheez-Its in the vending machine. For $5 a month, you're going to get ad-free shows for Locked On Eagles. You're going to become a member of our Discord channel. We've got Eagles fans in our group chats. We've got NFL talk, different channels for each division. Locked On hosts are members as well. We have a Locked On merch store for our exclusive members, exclusive access to our national podcast, so much more. If you're interested, head over to lockedoneagles.supercast.com or lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer. All right, so I'm headed down to Indianapolis today. Going to be at Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni's press conference. Going to be watching the workouts later this week. Who could be the future of the Philadelphia Eagles? A lot of Eagles have made their money at the Combine. You look at Quinyon Mitchell, really, he was killing it that offseason. The Senior Bowl, I was down there. His run in Mobile is one of the best runs at the Senior Bowl that I've ever seen up close and personal. Probably the best. Him, Reek Wolin's up there, Ladd McConkey. Like there's a lot that stand out, but Quinyon was there. And then he goes to the Combine and just blows the roof off of Lucas Oil Stadium with this 40-yard dash with, some of the cone drills, his agility, his lateral movement, his speed, his ball tracking, his hands. It was unbelievable. You look at Jordan Davis in 2022, the way he ran a 4.82 at over 330 pounds. Like, unbelievable. Jordan Davis won a lot of money at the Combine. Nolan Smith tested amazingly in Indianapolis as well in 2023. So the Combine does matter, but like I said on the show a couple days ago, the Combine is something that you shouldn't use as gospel. Like when John Ross broke the 40-yard dash record back in 2017, that made him a first-round pick when he shouldn't have been, right? Like the Combine shouldn't completely sway you on a prospect, but what it can do is if you see something good or bad from a prospect this week in Indy, it should raise questions or it either should confirm something you thought about a prospect that you got from the film, or it should raise a question about a prospect, and then you go back to the film to answer. I don't like just using the Combine one day for a prospect. I don't think is a fair evaluation of who they are. They could have woke up sore. They just might not have been their day. Who knows why they ran just a little bit slower, why they didn't test as well. Obviously, it's a big moment, and you want players to show up in the biggest spots, right? But for me, it's like, if a guy's film is unbelievable and he runs a little bit slower than I thought, does that like kill his stock? No. But it could be a tiebreaker between two prospects you really like if somebody tests better than another. And I just think it should always lead you back to the tape. It either should confirm something you wanted to make sure you knew about a player, or it should raise a question, then the film should then answer for you. The combine should just raise those thoughts, but they shouldn't conclude, in my opinion, anything for you. At least in a negative way or in a positive way too much. But I think it can help get you there. It's just one part. It's just one part of the recipe. It's one ingredient to the entire recipe of the draft process. But there's a couple guys that could really help their stock on the offensive side of the ball, or that could hurt it. For me, one guy I'm really looking at is a fringe first round tackle, in my opinion, in Alabama's Caden Proctor. Most mock drafts, I do see him going in the first round. Just a mammoth of a man, a mauler at tackle, really powerful, has good length. The weight is there, the power is there, the wingspan. But what I'm a little bit nervous about is the weight, kind of like Jordan Davis on the other side of the ball, is the agility, the footwork, the explosion off the line of scrimmage, beating guys to the middle, like beating guys to their chest, the fast hand movements. I do think I want to see him at the combine if he does all the testing. I would love to see him maybe look a little bit more athletic than what I saw on tape, because Proctor is somebody right now, I don't know if he's the Eagles kind of offensive lineman, but he is in that tier with Blake Miller and Monroe Freeling of, outside those, like after the top three tackles, those guys that'll probably be in that range from 15 to 25, and the Eagles are right now picking at the 23rd overall selection. So Proctor has a lot of strengths, right? Again, he is like a classic old school tackle, but it would make me feel better if, he moved well out there on the field. I'm not expecting him to run a 4.82 like Jordan Davis in the 40, but I would love to see like his first 10-yard split be faster than what I'm thinking, right? For an offensive lineman, I think you're looking at more instead of the 40-yard dash. You're looking at that first like 10, 20-yard get off, right? Because that's when he gets to that second and third level as a run blocker. I want to see if Proctor moves better than I thought I saw on film, because I'm not a huge Proctor guy right now, so I think he could definitely earn himself some money this weekend on Sunday if he's moving better than what some people are concerned about, for sure. And the weight's a big thing, but he definitely has some strength. It's not like he would be off my board for the Eagles as a Lane Johnson heir apparent at right tackle. Somebody else I'm really intrigued by, haven't really talked about him much since my season simulation. I had the Eagles get him in the third round of my mock draft, but Georgia tight end Oscar Delp, he's someone that I think is going to test really well. And of all of the tight ends the Eagles could take on day 2, Max Clare is the name that I like the most, probably. And Daniel Jeremiah mentioned him for the Eagles specifically in his press conference, his virtual presser that I attended a few days ago, which opened my eyes for sure, because DJ is definitely connected with the Eagles. But Oscar Delp might make even more sense, because I think he's one of the best blocking tight ends you can get on day 2. And, the stats aren't really there. The production, he had to share an offense with a lot of playmakers, including at one point Brock Bowers at that same position. But when you look at like the flash highlights of Oscar Delp, you can see why he'll probably be a second or third round pick. Like the athletic traits are there. He's got the size. I think he's got good hands. Is he the most like elusive tight end in the world that's going to break 1,000 tackles? No, but I think he runs really hard. He's a good blocker. He's one of the more complete prospects in that second tier of the tight end position. I think he's a really, really well-rounded player, and kind of reminds me a little bit of Dallas Goedert coming out of South Dakota State back in 2018. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if that second or third pick for the Eagles is a tight end. And Oscar Delp, I think, is right there with Michael Trigg from Baylor and Max Clare from Ohio State. Delp's a guy I like a lot, and I think the testing could show this is like an athletic freak that can also be a classic inline tight end. This is not Kenyon Sadiq, who I think is tight end 1, but do I really trust him to be someone that's run blocking all the time next to your tackles? Not so sure. I think he is more of that receiving tight end that's going to line up, standing up as a kind of a wide receiver that's going to move around in pre-snap motion. And Delp is more of that traditional guy. The Eagles need to get a lot better with run blocking at this position. Your tight ends coach is now your run game coordinator. So I think Delp makes a lot of sense, and I'm going to be watching him closely in Indy as well. He'll be working out tight ends and DBs on Friday. The offensive linemen, so Caden Proctor, will be on Sunday. Thursday, we have defensive linemen and linebackers. And then Saturday, of course, is the sexy day. Quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers. Speaking of that day, Brennan Thompson from Mississippi State. He is going to run, I think, the fastest 40 time of anybody. Maybe we'll see what happens at cornerback, but on Saturday, I think Brennan Thompson's going to steal the show. That doesn't mean he should be a first-round pick like John Ross if this guy breaks 4.3. If he gets close to Xavier Worthy's record from 2024, I don't think that means he should, again, fly up people's draft boards, because you already knew on tape that this guy is a field stretcher. He is unbelievable at tracking the football and the ball in his hands. Like, he is, yes, undersized and definitely a niche like Rashid Shaheed, Deshaun Jackson, Xavier Worthy type that probably isn't a true X wide receiver one, but for certain teams that want to get explosive on day 2, like the Philadelphia Eagles that want a field stretcher, I think he could definitely help himself out by just crushing that 40 and confirming what everybody thinks about him. I'm really excited just because, again, the combine, you don't want to overreact to 40-yard dashes, but they're fun. Like, that's like the biggest part of the combine from a fan perspective. You want to see these guys crush it. You want to see somebody break the record. That's why Worthy, it was so fun seeing him do that a couple years ago. And I think someone with the best chance to do that is Brennan Thompson. LSU receiver Xavier Thomas as well would be somebody that I think could just run like crazy on Saturday, but Thompson's the guy I'm watching the most, and I kind of like that idea for the Eagles on day 2 if they want a field stretcher for this offense. If A.J. Brown comes back, Brennan Thompson is one of my favorite wide receiver 3 ideas. He's not somebody that I like for the Eagles if Brown is gone. I think the receiver prospect, the type changes for me based on if A.J. is here or not. But if he is here, that's the kind of wide receiver 3 I want for the Birds. We'll wrap this up coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles, our 2026 NFL Scouting Combine preview. 3 defensive players that I'm watching this week in Indy. But first, today's episode of Locked On Eagles is presented by FanDuel. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? Well, FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. I love futures this time of year. Whether it's picking a team to win the title or grabbing a conference championship, it adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can you win cash, but it also could send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. We're wrapping up this Tuesday edition of the show. Headed down to Indy for the Combine today. So excited. Got Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni talking to the media. We will have a recap episode of that as well. That'll be our bonus show for today, I should say, on our YouTube channel. So I will go over the biggest takeaways from Howie and Nick's presser. But today, first, though, we got to preview the Combine from a prospect perspective. 3 players I'm looking at the most on offense: Alabama tackle Caden Proctor, Georgia tight end Oscar Delp, and then Mississippi State wide receiver Brennan Thompson. On defense, I'm looking at 2 defensive backs that are, I think one's definitely a day 2 pick, one's fringe day 1, early day 2 at the latest, and then I'm thinking of a defensive lineman from day 2 as well. The defensive back I was talking about that might sneak into the first round, depending on how many safeties go. Oregon safety Dylan Thieneman. And I'm not just saying this because he's a white safety, but I do think he's actually a really good replacement to Reed Blankenship. I think when you look at his instincts, closing in on like his route recognition, his ball skills, his ability to high point the football, kind of be a ball hawk in clutch moments. He's a really good tackler. But kind of like Reed, it's interesting, he's not the best one-on-one coverage safety. I don't think he is someone that would match up well against elite route running slot receivers. But I do think Thieneman, and again, it's funny because it would be a part two to the exciting whites in the Eagles secondary. But I do think Thieneman is an interesting idea to replace Reed Blankenship if he walks in free agency. I mentioned in Mock Draft Monday yesterday, I had the Eagles taking in the first round. I moved down and took Toledo safety Emmanuel McNeil-Warren from Toledo. But if they don't take McNeil-Warren, I think the third best safety in this class, it goes Caleb Downs first from Ohio State. I think he's going top 10. Then Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, probably a top 20, top 25 pick. Then it's Thieneman. I think there's a lot of teams at the back end of the first round that saw the impact of Nick Emenwari for Seattle this year, that have seen the impact for Kyle Hamilton in Baltimore, Jalen Petrie in Houston, and they'll want this kind of versatile piece. I think that could be Thieneman. And I'm watching him at the Combine because I want to see him move in space. Like, I do want to see how he clicks and closes. I want to see in those cone drills how he's moving laterally, how he gets in and out of his breaks, changing direction, going back, going forward, side to side. I think those drills are really good for these kind of prospects that, again, check a lot of boxes, but from an athletic perspective, I think this is how the Combine kind of gives you a good idea of what kind of caliber athlete that they can be. He is an interesting idea for me for the Eagles. First pick or the second pick on day 2. It's 54 right now in round 2. I don't think he'd be there. You'd probably have to trade up, but definitely in on that idea. Defensive lineman from Alabama, LT Overton, is somebody I'm also watching. He is my guy in this class for me. He's somebody that can play both inside and outside on the defensive line. Kind of you could kill two birds with one stone as somebody that can replace some of the production for Jalen Phillips. If he leaves this year, Moro Ojomo long-term, if he doesn't get an extension with the Eagles after 2026, I think Overton's somebody that you could kind of use the way that you used Brandon Graham last year. Third down and long, obvious pass rushing situations. He's out there playing as like a 3-tech, playing on the inside. I think he's got really good length, really good power. Not the bendiest defensive end in the world, but again, you guys have heard me say it 1,000 times this offseason. I want that lengthy, powerful, more traditional 4-3 defensive end kind of player in this rotation, especially if they lose Jalen Phillips. It's why I love the Phillips trade. It's why I liked when they signed Zadarius Smith early on in the season. Overton's a player that I really like. Interested to see how he tests out from an athletic perspective. If he does really well this weekend, he's somebody one of my favorite ideas for the Eagles in the second round. But I could see him slipping into the back end of the first round. People like, in defensive rooms, especially for a defensive line, people like that inside-out versatility. Versatility is the name of the game in the NFL right now. And then cornerback out of Florida, Devin Moore. This is such a Lou DiBiase corner. Trying to find my new Reek Woolen if the Eagles do not sign Reek Woolen in free agency, although I'm not going to lie, I'm getting a little bit fired up. Seeing a lot of PFF linked to Reek Woolen with the Eagles, a couple other media platforms as well. If they don't get him, though, I would like to, try it again on another prospect that has that Keely Ringo, Reek Woolen kind of length, speed. Yeah, they are a little bit stiffer in the hips, sure, but I just like those kind of playmakers, those big guys that are also athletes, and I think that could be Florida cornerback Devin Moore. I think for somebody that's 6'3" and has that kind of wingspan, like Reek Woolen, I think he's more Reek Woolen than Keely Ringo. I think he moves side to side a lot better than Ringo did coming out of Georgia. But again, I always love to look for those lengthy, tall, athletic cornerbacks on day 2, day 3 that have good ball skills, and Moore is somebody that I've been watching a little bit more over the last couple weeks, and I'm a big fan of his game. Interested to see how he tests in Indianapolis. That's a guy that I think could be an option for the Eagles as CB3. I haven't done that in my mock draft Mondays yet, but I wouldn't rule out corner. I don't think it would be in the first 2 rounds, but like if they use that 68th overall pick, or they're picking the 60s or 90s in round 3, I think one of those selections, or at the 4th round at 122, one of those picks could be a cornerback. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in and making us your first listen each and every day. Until tomorrow, thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.